Have you ever questioned why you can clearly understand what is right, yet still fail to act on it? Why you start with intense determination, promise yourself that this time things will truly change, and then somehow fall back into the same repeated cycle of delay, quitting midway, and letting yourself down? It isn't that you lack awareness, and it isn't that you lack the wish to improve. Yet it often feels like some hidden inner pull keeps dragging you back to the very place you were trying to leave. Society usually answers quickly, saying you lack discipline or willpower. But Jung believed that explanation was far too shallow and even harmful. People do not undermine themselves without a deeper psychological reason. The issue is not that you haven't tried hard enough. The issue is that you are not fully in charge of your entire mind. Beneath the conscious layer you call the ego, there are other parts of you that have been ignored and pushed away. They don't vanish just because you refuse to see them. They continue operating in the background, silently influencing your decisions and patterns. When they are not heard, they will eventually find expression through procrastination, compulsions, and self-defeating habits you struggle to explain. This exploration is not about forcing yourself to become tougher. It is about understanding how the mind actually works and how to approach change from a deeper place. And if you are hearing this at a moment when you feel ready for change, perhaps there is a reason you stayed. There is a certain inner condition many people recognize but rarely confront directly. It is not dramatic breakdown, and it is not obvious suffering. It feels more like a dull, constant heaviness, as if your life is moving forward but not fully belonging to you. You wake up, fulfill responsibilities, keep everything functioning. Yet somewhere inside there is a quiet awareness that something is restrained, or that you are restraining yourself without knowing why. This condition rarely shatters people. Instead, it freezes them, and because it does not destroy them, they learn to exist within it. They grow used to postponing important choices, used to saying later, used to leaving unfinished the things that once made them feel alive. Slowly, blocking yourself becomes so normal that you stop questioning its origin. Think about a simple everyday situation. After exhausting days, someone decides that tonight they will rest properly. Sleep early, avoid distractions, wake refreshed. The decision is logical and clear. Yet when night arrives, they still reach for the phone, scroll briefly, then longer until fatigue and regret replace rest. The phone is not the true issue. The real question is what overrides a rational decision within hours. Jung saw such moments not as trivial but as meaningful clues. They reveal that humans do not always act in alignment with conscious intention. There is a subtle divide between what we think we want and what we actually do. In that gap, self-sabotage emerges. What made Jung different was that he did not treat this contradiction as a defect to eliminate quickly. He treated it as something to understand. For him, no behavior is random. When someone repeatedly slows themselves, especially near important breakthroughs, the question is not, why am I weak, but what part of me resists this change? We are taught to see ourselves as a single decision maker, but lived experience shows we are more like an inner field where multiple forces move at once. Some push forward, others pull back. When these forces remain unseen, they clash silently, producing stagnation. Consciousness believes it holds control because it speaks in language, logic, and personal narrative. But storytelling is not the same as governing the whole psyche. Much happens beyond that spotlight, and those hidden processes often determine life's direction. Jung compared consciousness to a stage light. On stage, everything appears orderly. Yet behind it lies a vast backstage where drives, memories, and emotions continue operating. When stage and backstage move differently, life feels chaotic even if outwardly it appears structured. Jung did not dismiss willpower. He only warned that it fails when fighting unseen inner opposition. If you try moving where a deeper part of you is unready to go, every step feels heavy. Over time, you begin identifying with that heaviness. He once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will guide your life, and you will call it fate. He did not suggest removing the unconscious, only recognizing it. Without that recognition, freedom is limited. From this angle, self-sabotage is not a final judgment about you. It is communication. It signals that something inside has been ignored yet remains active. Until that message is understood, the blocking will repeat in more complex ways. Real transformation does not start with action, but with changing how you interpret what is happening within you. And if these reflections feel personally familiar, that recognition itself is meaningful. Awareness is not weakness. It is the beginning of honesty, and from honesty a truer path can slowly open. Once you see self-sabotage as a signal rather than failure, another question arises naturally. Who is actually directing your life? We commonly assume the conscious ego is in charge. We think, decide, act. If change fails, we assume we need more discipline. Jung saw this belief as one of the most misleading illusions. A myth helps illustrate this. In Greek lore, Sisyphus is condemned to push a boulder uphill forever, only for it to roll back down. He is often seen as a symbol of meaninglessness. But psychologically, he represents the ego, convinced that effort alone can conquer everything. He does not fail due to weakness, but because he relies solely on force without understanding the larger structure trapping him. Each time he fails, he pushes harder instead of questioning the system. Jung saw modern people mirroring this pattern. The more resistance we feel, the more force we apply, tightening control. Jung did not reject the ego. He saw it as the center of consciousness necessary for functioning. Problems begin when it claims to represent the whole psyche. He wrote that the ego is not the entire personality but only its center. When it forgets this limit, conflict grows. Because the ego uses language and logic, it assumes supremacy, yet most psychological processes operate through emotion, memory, and instinct. When these are unseen, the ego cannot direct them, yet still believes it does. This illusion appears subtly. People design strict systems of productivity and goals, but beneath them may lay exhaustion, suppressed emotion, or lack of meaning. When ignored, the system breaks down. The ego responds by increasing control, not by listening. Jung believed this is where sabotage begins, as a balancing reaction. When the ego forces direction without inner agreement, resistance forms, appearing as fatigue, stagnation, or regression. Imagine the ego as a rower steering a boat. It sees the surface ahead and believes it commands the journey. Yet the river has hidden currents and undertows. When the boat drifts, the rower blames effort, rowing harder. But the struggle increases instability. Control was never complete. Many choices are prepared unconsciously before conscious awareness intervenes. Losing motivation may signal that deeper alignment is missing, not that discipline vanished. Jung emphasized that losing control can be meaningful. It may signal the ego confronting its limits. If not suppressed, this moment can begin inner restructuring. His hack was not stronger mastery, but seeing through the illusion of total mastery. When the ego relaxes its grip, understanding becomes possible. From here, another conflict appears between the persona and the shadow. The persona is the social mask, the role shaped for acceptance and safety. It is necessary, but danger begins when you mistake the mask for your true face. Everything that does not fit that role is pushed into the shadow. The shadow holds anger, desire, vulnerability, ambition, freedom, anything excluded from the approved image. Picture the psyche as a house. The front rooms are clean and welcoming. That is the persona. But there is a locked back room where everything unwanted is stored. You avoid it, yet it fills over time. Jung believed that neglected rooms eventually force their doors open, not through words but through behavior. Self-sabotage is often that forced opening. People rarely sabotage themselves when failing. They do it when rising, because success strengthens the persona. If the persona grows too dominant, the shadow resists being erased. Jung wrote that the less the shadow is lived consciously, the darker it becomes. Sabotage then becomes its language. When you live only through the persona, the shadow finds indirect expression, breaking structures you try to maintain. Many then hate themselves, seeing irrational actions. Jung saw this not as failure but as self-correction, an invitation to wholeness. Persona and shadow must relate, not eliminate each other. One helps you function socially, the other helps you live authentically. Balance prevents sabotage. From here emerges a different approach to change, not suppression but dialogue. Jung viewed the psyche as a living system. Systems resist force, even refined force like rigid self-discipline. When you treat emotions as enemies, the mind becomes defensive. Suppression creates rebound effects. Thoughts and feelings return stronger because the brain must keep monitoring what it tries to avoid. Thus, the more people try to control themselves, the more out of control they feel. Jung said enlightenment comes not from imagining light but from making darkness conscious. Dialogue means staying present with inner experience without rushing to fix or reject it. When feelings are seen, they no longer need to disrupt life to gain recognition. Over time, this dialogue leads to individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is not about success or perfection, but integration. When inner division decreases, sabotage loses purpose. The psyche no longer needs to disrupt you to be heard. You still face difficulty, but you no longer feel you are betraying yourself to survive. Individuation changes how failure is seen. It becomes information, not condemnation. Jung described life's privilege as becoming who you truly are. Many avoid this, busy fulfilling expectations. But when you stop performing and start listening inwardly, harmony begins forming, like an orchestra finally tuning together. Self-sabotage is the discord of parts unheard. When harmony grows, sabotage fades naturally, not as an enemy defeated but as a function no longer needed. The core lesson is not mastering control but understanding division. When inner parts are recognized and allowed dialogue, the mind reorganizes. What remains is not perfection but alignment. You still struggle, but you no longer drag yourself backward just to cope. The brain stops fighting you because you stopped fighting yourself. And if even a small part of you slowed down while hearing this, that pause itself matters.